No public comments at this time. We'll move on to our campus partner updates. So we can begin with, I don't see.
We have
Ryan from the Nashville Soccer.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Ryan, filling in for Lindsay. She's sorry she can't be here this morning. For Nashville Soccer Club, since our last meeting, we hosted 2 home matches, one versus Montreal, one versus Cincinnati. This upcoming Saturday, we'll host Salt Lake. And then again, at the end of the month, the 26th, we'll host Chicago. Other events going on at the stadium today, we'll be hosting the FIFA president. He'll be doing a tour around the stadium prior to June's FIFA Club World Cup. Pending any questions, that's Nashville Soccer.
I had a question. During, I think the first home game, there were some glitches with power. Did that just impact the stadium, or did we see it in other places on property as well?
I'm only aware of what we were seeing on the field with the fans and the lights, and that's been troubleshot and fixed.
It has. Okay, so it was isolated.
Yeah, as far as I know, Laura, I don't.
Yeah, I did not. There were no reports of outages down here.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Oh, all right, cool. Thank you. Next, we will have Dirk. Yeah, Dirk is here. Yes. Yep.
Good morning, Commissioners. Dirk Womack. Just a quick update on the mixed use. The leasing at 445 Park Commons continues to go well. We're on track, and as of late last week, we're at 75% leased with residents. So we still have some left. So if you know anybody who wants an apartment, we'd love to talk to them. In the meantime, we continue to be active in our leasing efforts for the retail space. Fronting Fair Plaza. We already have Barista Parlor open, as you know, and we now have 2 other concepts that are in for permits now that'll begin building out shortly. One is Scout's Barbershop, and the other one is Voodoo Brewery, which ought to be really terrific. And then we're in either LOI or lease negotiations on the remaining 3 spaces. So in subsequent updates, I hope to have some updates for y'all on that, and that'll be exciting because I think we've got a ribbon cutting coming up for the Fair Plaza. Director Womack, that's April 26th?
I believe that is the date that's being kicked around. Wasn't sure if it was quite final yet,
okay,
but we can pencil that in for April 26th, and I will send a notice out to you.
Okay. So once that's confirmed, we'll get word out, and we'd love for the community to be engaged in that because it's a beautiful space. It really turned out terrific. In the meantime, we continue to be active on our pre-development efforts for what we call Block A, which is Lot 10, across the street from the supporters' entrance to Geodis Park. Hopefully the markets will settle down the next little bit, so we can have some interest rates and supply chain that allows us to afford a building. So that's kind of what we have going on right now. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
So are you still on track with the next building phase starting construction?
Yes, sir. Our goal would be to start this calendar year, but obviously there's some interesting things happening in the capital markets that we need to pay attention to. So we're hopeful.
Okay. Yes.
Dirk, any update on the, I can't remember what we call it, the sort of maker space, micro business space that's over there in the first building?
Oh, yes, Commissioner. Actually, we do have some good progress on that. The shell space, as you know, is built out. It's ready for improvements there, and we're negotiating with the Arts and Business Council of Greater Tennessee to basically lease the space and build it out for artists and artisans that can service the community. So we're right now in lease negotiations with them, and once that's done, we'll begin the fundraising effort to get that space built out, and we'd like to get as much of that accomplished this year as possible.
Is that one of the 3 that you mentioned are in LOI lease negotiations right now?
Actually, that would be an additional negotiation that we're doing right now for that. So thank you for the question.
One other question. I just wanted to ask, and Laura can give a full update for the full campus, but any storm damage or anything to you guys up on the hill there?
No, we were very fortunate. I know that the campus and other surrounding areas were impacted quite a bit, but we were fortunate not to have any impacts on our end.
Thank you. Any questions?
All right. Thank you.
Thank you, Doug. Next, we have Bob Sargent and Anthony Tate for the Speedway.
Yes, thank you. our opening night was rained out with the storms and the floods, so we're working with Laura to try to reschedule that possibly in June. Everything else is pretty well on track as our season gets started. We have our Legend National races coming up a week from this weekend, so that'll be our new kickoff date. We had our practice media day, and again, everything's pretty normal. We had some damage the campus did in our back lot, so some things mainly to clean up, things of that nature. So everything else is pretty normal. I want to introduce Anthony Tate here in the back in the black. He'll be here on board with us now, so living here in Nashville and working daily with the track and everything we can to help improve. And as we've mentioned here before, go to the schools and the community reach out and things like that. So he'll be very engaged. So I just want to introduce him. Any questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we will go into our capital project update. And I think that's David. Okay, I can't see behind the podium.
Good morning, Board of Commissioners, staff, and council. Glad to be before you here this morning. I'll be giving the overview from the budget dashboards. You all should have those in front of you. Be a brief update, but I will start by saying that most of the figures that I'll be presenting to you, my traditional caveat, are presented in arrears. Starting out with the blue sheet just focused on the fairgrounds containing the expo center. There's been no movement as far as budgets related since last month. I appeared before you on the 11th. Just wanted to highlight that doesn't mean that there's no work happening, but no invoice payments have occurred related to that area and that scope. On the Fair Park, however, we did have some expenses. Those are related to construction. Primarily that's related to the work, the maintenance and ongoing expenses there, but very little activity on the Fair Park Phase 2, which is the green sheet that you all have. And then highlighting the infrastructure Part 2 budget, majority of the costs there have been in the design and project management categories. There was an invoice that came through for construction that's largely related to the MOU between Market Street and the city. So covering those costs, but very little activity across the board in terms of expenditures being recognized since last month.
Questions? Nope. All right, thank you very much.
Good morning, everyone. I'll give you an
morning.
update on the projects, and then Ron Gobble with JHP would like to say a few words. So the Windgrove intersection, we're in for our final permitting on that. So this will be the final submission to Metro Water. So we're hoping for a quick turnaround on that. We already have the electrical relocated, so everything should be able to, when it's time to go, we'll be ready to go. The Coliseum Way Extension Road, that one's in final budgeting and permitting. We have some more submission that we have to make to Metro Water just because of the elevation of the bridge and the mitigation of the cut and fill. The other project, Fair Plaza, that is open. It's looking good up there. We're going to be doing a walkthrough tomorrow to kind of survey the landscape and irrigation and make sure all that's coming through. So that's in good shape. Additional projects. So we have the multi-purpose lot. That's one of the other projects that we're tracking, and that's right out over here across from the Art and in between 50 Forward. That's going to be a resurfaced multi-purpose lot, so they're making preps to get everything out of there. That one's permitted, ready to go, so as soon as we can get all that coordinated here in the next few weeks, we'll have that underway. Another project that started, and they got the entrance in prior to the rain, but it was out here off of Craighead. NDOT put in the first part of the sidewalk project, so they got that in before the rain. There was no damage. I was by there this morning. Everything kind of went around it. Out back there is some damage to some of the ornamental fence, which we just have to get going on getting that repaired. But that seems to be everything that I saw as far as damage. That's it for the projects. And like Ed discussed with you, the budgets are in good shape. Everything's running fine. We just got to get all these projects through permitting and get them finally going. I'll hand it over to Ron here for some final comments. Thank you, everybody.
Good morning, Chairman, Commissioners.
Just want to say that it was be 7 years in May next month that we first started here and started working with the Fair Board and Director Womack and their phenomenal staff as program managers for the campus. It has been a wonderful run. Our contract expires in June. We started transition to Colliers engineering in January. We're working through that process. We'll be around till June, but this will be our last Fair Board meeting unless needed. So I just wanted to say that how much on behalf of GHP, we really appreciate the opportunities to work with you, your director, their staff, and we've gone through some crazy times, haven't we, Laura? We've at the time we got involved, this facility was not even designed or imagined. The soccer stadium was not located on the campus yet. It was not approved by council, and we've done a lot. So I just, again, want to say that we appreciate it, and one of the big takeaways of my career is getting to work with some fine people. So thank you very much, and if you need anything, you know where to reach us. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Any questions?
I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you, Ron, David, and your whole team. You've been a pleasure to work with. You've guided us and with your expertise and your experience, and it's been really helpful. I know you've taught me a lot, and it's been a pleasure in return.
All right, so next we go into our division updates, and we will begin with our finance report.
Hello, everyone. The financial information presented today is preliminary, and all revenues and expenses for March 2025 may not have been recorded to the ledgers as of April 7th, 2025, when this report was created. The revenues for March 2025 are approximately $2.7 million. Other financing source is around $1 million. Expenses are around $3.1 million, resulting in a net gain of approximately $673,352. Depreciation expense is $1,024,134, resulting in a total loss of roughly $350,782. I would like for you guys to make a note that we have been contacted by the Office of Management and Budget, OMB, and they have informed us that they will be retrieving the subsidy posted to our account and returning it to the general fund. However, it will still remain on our report until it is removed from our account. Next, we will move to the revenue by division. Comparing year-to-date and actuals for each division is as follows. Flea market has a deficit of about $336,660. The contributing factors, overestimation of revenue and reduction in dealer and patron participation. Corporate sales has a surplus of $106,600. Divisional fair has a surplus of $107,800. However, because fair has received most of all of its revenue, there will be a deficit of about $51,000 for the fair. And that's due to the rain that we experienced a couple of days during the fair. Contracts has a surplus of $35,281, and other has a surplus for now of $1.1 million. For our expenses, overall, we are within budget for our expenses. However, divisional fair is over budget by about $20,000. For our gains and losses by division, we have fair is showing a surplus of $160,805. Of course, we're expecting a shortfall at the end of the fiscal year for fair. Flea market is showing $262,630 in loss currently. Events, corporate sales events has a surplus of $522,046. Oh, I'm sorry. Fair has a loss of $793,614. And contracts has a gain of $47,400. For our other accounts, D&D Concession Commission has an ending balance of around $53,000. We will be expending that money this fiscal year, so this year will be the last that we will see of this particular account. For our property tax proration, our balance is $340,116. For our outstanding invoices, we have approximately $30,950 in outstanding invoices. Any questions?
Yes. Are there any questions? Yes, sir.
Well, not to jump on Anthony's potential question, but Unicorn World is 200 days out. So is that, when do we write that off? Or when do you start collections? That could be a question for Laura, too.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Cool. That was not my main question. It's not so much a question. It's sort of, well, it is a question for Satrice, but it's also just a comment. Like, two things. One, obviously we've got a negative trend revenue-wise on the flea market program, and I'm just thinking we're in April right now. It's a good time to start planning a mitigation for next year, both budget-wise and also just looking at the program. Additionally, and this relates to, as we were talking about before the meeting, Satrice, about entertainment dollars. Entertainment dollars are going to be the first thing to go in a down economy. So I'm just thinking we need to start talking about a sort of mitigation plan against next year's budget, given that there's going to be potential revenue reductions based on both macroeconomic trends, and obviously we already see the trends on the flea market program. So it's more of a comment. I think, Jasper, we should probably have a little bit of discussion about that and just think about what we can direct the staff to do as far as, or what ideas they have on the flea market program.
Well, I mean, yeah. Well, this has been a conversation that we've been having. So we've asked for plans before and ideas before about how to help mitigate some of the potential budget shortfall. But I think that I think people got a little bit relaxed once they heard that the Metro gave this extra money, and we haven't seen where those things have been implemented. I think someone said that, oh, well, we're going to start doing free parking on Fridays. I think that was one idea that came out. They said we'll offer free parking on Fridays to help increase traffic of the fair. But I don't think there was anything else beyond that. And we don't even know if that's been implemented and if it's actually even worked yet. What has been the result of that? So yes, thank you for your question, because it's something that I've been trying to get us to think about for the last few months, that money is going to stop flowing. We're not going to be able to rely on Metro to subsidize, budget shortfalls. And I think now it's become reality to people. And so what is going to be the plan is a great question. So I don't know if we need to schedule, another retreat so that we can spend, some time, in a deep dive, a planned amount of time to deep dive into whether we need to take a look at, because like you said, entertainment is, people are going to see that as not a necessity. And so we're going to have to think about it when we think about the fair, and what is that actually going to look like? Do we need to cut back, on certain things and maybe reimagine what the fair looks like? Rides versus experiences. Should we be in Music City? Should we sort of focus on entertainment, and maybe having some type of low-cost idol competition, versus, where we're encouraging people to participate musically in different things and creating, an environment where people can, coming in versus we're spending a lot on carnival rides that is just not the place for it. Like, we have some serious we're gonna have to have some serious reckoning, with conversations going forward, because the money is not gonna be there. Yeah.
Mine's a question more in the expenses. Can you walk us through are those $710,000? What are we spending on? And second part of that question, if you can just share with us, Patrice, how we are allocating from the general expenses, we're allocating to each division a portion of those general expenses. So if you can just share what's the criteria for that allocation, and then what are the specific expenses related to flea market?
So for flea market, or just overall, our top 3 expenses, payroll, utilities, and low cap. So majority of the flea market expenses is going to be payroll and utilities, right? And so some of that has to do with our allocation of overhead. When it comes to our allocation of overhead, it was split evenly, right, for this fiscal year. However, after talking with management for next fiscal year, we've decided that for services, they're going to be split evenly, but when it comes to supplies, it will be based on utilization.
Yep, and I've been involved in some conversations. That's why I'm asking to make sure that we're all talking about the same thing there, because I think that we need to adjust that number first, because this deficit could be much bigger or actually much smaller, and the deficit is hiding somewhere else, right? So I think the exercise of better allocating the actual expenses on each one of the divisions, then we can actually start working on what we should change or not, or add or reduce for each one of those divisions, right? Because this could be we have a cash cow and we have a dog. We just don't know which one is which, because right now they're all the same, right? And I bet they're not the same ones. We get a little bit more in the nitty gritty. So yeah, looking forward to see how when we start separating those, so we can make a plan on the actual cost that for each one of these divisions, and not. I think that 25% per division is not wise to continue doing it that way. So happy to hear we're moving in a different direction there. Thanks.
Yeah, absolutely correct. Yes, Commissioner Hartley.
And remind me, and I know I literally just asked you this, Laura, when are we getting the full input of our sort of by event bill back new pricing structure on the that we worked on last year?
So we did phase 1, which was 4% building rental increase, and 50% of the increase for move-in and move-out days was implemented July 1st, 2024. And the second phase is going to be implemented July 1st, 2025.
Thank you. And the reason I'm asking that question is, so that's obviously tracking. I mean, you're billing back the cost. So how does that map against what Satrice just said about we're allocating 25% against each division? Obviously, we're generating revenue against the bill backs, which are tied to the expenses of doing an event. So, like, how does that work? I'm trying to figure out how to square that with a straight allocation of expenses against the 4 divisions. Maybe it's like apples and oranges, but I'm just trying to understand that. You see what I'm saying?
Can you reword it?
Like, I can definitely try to reword it. It's not a very good question. The idea is we bring an event in and we charge them a flat rent, and then we charge them a bill back, which is the cost of goods and services provided plus a premium on top. That's the new model, right? And so I'm trying to figure out, when we're recognizing that revenue, I'm trying to get to where Diego's going. It's like we're recognizing that revenue, it's coming in, and it's revenue that's tied to the expenses generated by the event. So are we at this point, we're not using that to proxy the actual expenses against the event, or we are?
I think what I hear you saying is when we're billing for our event that we have an admin percentage that we're adding to that, and that's not what's occurring.
Well, you're billing back the services that you're providing, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
yes.
Can you use that to figure the expenses that each division should be actually incurring? That's what I'm asking.
Yes.
Okay, so that's where we're going.
Okay.
We're going
Right.
to go from the 20.
Right.
Thank you. That's where I was trying to get
Yes,
to.
yes.
So Diego, we're going to be there soon because we've got the data.
Yes.
So is there any reason we have to wait to change those? I mean, obviously you could do a new projection based on, I don't want to mess up our budgeting system, but I think we're kind of concerned that the business model on a couple of these are pretty negative, and so we need to maybe make a quicker course correction.
Or at least, as you're saying, work on a projection. So then our conversation for how to remedy some of these stuff is based on the new model that actually makes sense when we're associating cost revenue directly, right? Not separately. So yeah, because if it'll be a waste of time for us to make plans on numbers that are this gray, right? We need to understand a lot better. So not necessarily doing an exercise going back.
Right, going forward. I understand.
It's just if we can project going forward, and if that's not enough information, then we see if we need to go back a little bit to at least understand it. But yeah, my whole point was we need better numbers to make a better decision. This is too generic to know what's happening.
I think that's good. And I would ask that we try to look at that. We try to look at the actual expense lines. I'm sorry, I didn't realize we were actually allocating that 25%. I'd forgotten that. But also, and I agree that we should look for better data, but we also, anecdotally, I think we also probably know where the weaker divisions are. And so we also don't need to wait for perfect data to make decisions. We also need, and then Laura, this would be, maybe we're kind of where Jasper's going is like, well, we've seen attendance dropping at the flea market. And so we clearly need to make a bigger stimulus to try to change the dynamics of it, right? So I think maybe we should look for some ideas from you of what are some things we can do to sort of change that revenue trajectory and try to make it sort of shift upwards. And I'm sure you already have plans on that because that's clearly your job. And I think we just need to probably hear or be reminded. You probably have actually told us these, but just be reminded where we're going on that.
One more thing, agreeing with that, is there a way that we can do, and this can be high-level ballpark, cost analysis on how much of the total cost we could, if it's not 25% each, if you can help us with an adjustment of those numbers, right? Say if we know that half of our expenses are actually dedicated primarily, say, with the fair, then that one should be closer to 50%. And if flea market is only 10% of our expenses, at least if an estimate for us to be able to play with that, is that?
We can do that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, because I think the numbers are there. Like, I mean, and we're only looking at this snapshot because this is what we've asked them to prepare. So the numbers, so we have all the data. All the data is in-house, and it's almost been a year since we've implemented the new program. So we should be able to pull that data. Should be able to pull it, but we don't have it in front of us because this is what we've asked for. This particular report. So I don't think that we should. We don't need to wait a long period of time because the numbers are there. She just needs to, I'm pretty sure it's just a couple of clicks and she can have all the information that we're asking for today. But, I think that we do need to probably look at a longer meeting, yes.
I will say this, that I think allocating the indirect cost is going to be part of the challenge, because you have to decide the methodology, and it has to be something that's measurable and reasonable. So when you talk about utilities and you talk about repairs and stuff, everybody has to pay for that. And so how you allocate it, do you allocate it on utilization? You have somebody like Scott says, I'm only using it for 10 days, so why do I have to pay X, Y, Z? And so you having that's the challenge, to say what is fair, equitable, measurable to allocate these costs. Because that's where it comes. The direct costs we capture that.
Yeah.
It is the indirect cost.
No, thank you for saying that. So I'm actually off base here. So the billbacks are not the lion's share of this expense. It's really your overhead of your personnel. I mean, then that becomes. I mean, that then it kind of flips to you. To like, it sounds like we gotta get a fair. I don't know. I mean, like, tell us your thoughts, Laura. Sorry, I'm just going to stop talking.
No, I think you're all right. And we have had many, many discussions internally on how to fine tune our coding and how we allocate costs. But like Satrice said, a lion's share of our expenses that we are allocating to these business units are payroll, utilities, and internal services that Metro provides, which includes, information services, our legal counsel, our HR, we have to pay for those internal services. And so those are, whether your event is 10 days or once a month, like the flea market, we have to have those services. So we have been allocating those at the 25%, because regardless of the fact that the fair is, 3.5 weeks, we're working on it all year round, and this building has to exist and the lights have to be on, regardless of the time spent. So I think what we've been working on is, we have very little discretionary expenses. We've got repairs, we've got utilities, we have, maybe some of our discretionary is advertising. But that's the one thing we are working on right now to increase exposure for the flea market. So do you really want to cut our meager $40,000 advertising budget, which overall is not very much, but we're dedicating it to trying to get more exposure for the market. So yeah, happy to dive into those numbers more, but again, most of our expenses are the upkeep of this facility in order to do what we do.
And so, I think we need to take a look at like how are we using the fact that we are in an enterprise zone? Like, how can we best utilize that to help generate revenue and to generate more revenue for the facilities, I think we've also, started a project which was reaching out to companies for sponsorship, other revenue generating ideas, whether it was naming, expo halls, have we sought any, potential sponsors for that to help underwrite particular costs? These are things that we've, sort of thrown out there before to help thinking about revenue generation. I know one idea we had talked about is maybe going back to council and asking about the usage of the tax dollars that we're receiving, and to help with, some of the costs. So this, for instance, if there's been any damage because of this past weekend's flood, are we able to go to that pot of money to help with, maybe fixing some of the buildings or whatever has happened on campus, versus going into our our bigger pot, to take money from. So it's just like, can we do that? Like, can we?
So you'll see in our strategic work plan all of the things that you are talking about today. So they've been identified in the strategic work plan. I don't think there's anything that any of you have said today that is not addressed in there as a priority for us to work on, and we are currently and will continue in the future. I will address the damage part when I get to my executive directors, because that's going to be a really important conversation on how we manage that. But yeah, we have targeted those things. We have already approached. We had the conversation during our budget meetings with administration and finance about the idea of utilizing the tax diversion fund. So we are in process with those conversations, and trying to gauge the appetite of Metro to make that adjustment. So we are proceeding with those conversations.
I mean, I think that's definitely very reassuring. And I mean, again, I think you've got the North Star in front of you. I just want to continue to sort of push on the urgency side. I mean, I think can we move quickly? But I mean, I think that's a really good explanation on the expense allocation. And, we clearly see your work. I mean, to Jasper's point, other revenue generating ideas. I look at this corporate sales event. I mean, you're positive $400K, and that's through the efforts of bringing more events in and continue to upsize events and optimize and bring the higher value events. The question is not really at the staff level. The question is, how much are we going to pay as a city to have two events that lose a lot of money? That's it. I mean, that's just a question. And that's a question that's like more of a policy question. But
and are we really losing that much money in those events, right? Because I'm going to use that's how I was doing math here. If 50% of the revenue, if you remove the $1 million that shouldn't be there, right? 50% of the revenue is coming from corporate sales. And we're only allocating 25% of if we're putting more of our effort into bringing those dollars and we want to do even more, I would say we should be allocating closer to 50% of our expenses into what we're doing for selling that.
But that assumes that all the business lines are equally, have an equal margin. I mean, to Laura's point, she has to maintain a staff to do a fair because she has a program of a fair.
But doing 25% assumes that every division takes up the same amount of resources, the same amount of time to bring different types of revenue, right?
Yeah.
So if I'm in charge of selling those four things, and I'm spending 25% of my time on each one of those, but one of those brings half of the money, I would say we have a
Well, that's what I'm saying is
there.
it should reflect reality. I agree with you. It's one option is we could sort of map the expenses against the sort of the margin of that division. But what I'm saying is, and this is really a question for Laura, is what is the staff time? And I'm just thinking about staff. I know overhead is there are other categories as well, but what is the staff time actually dedicated to? Is that actually accurate that 50% of our overall staffing costs goes to our corporate sales events? Or is it more accurate to say that closer to 25% of our staff time goes to corporate sales events? Maybe Diego's right. Maybe 50% of your staff is fully dedicated, but I feel like it's probably closer to the allocation that you've laid out. But, tell me what you think.
Well, last year, I believe 2 years ago, we started this exercise of tracking hours, project hours. And we did that it didn't give us as much accurate data, I think, as we were hoping for. But we did that in the anticipation of this exercise, going into this year with billing and coding expenses, especially payroll, to certain business units. So we did that in order to do the allocation for this year. And even though we didn't plan on changing it for this fiscal year, like Satrice said, it was more of doing the other expenses, the supplies and those types of things based on utilization. So we're doing a hybrid model this year with overhead versus expenses. Our reasoning, our justification behind that was, again, we have to have this building. We have to do all the things to keep, to support those events regardless. So, we can take a further look at it going into this next fiscal year to fine tune that.
Let me just press you a little bit. What do you think the staff allocation, you track the hours, you clearly you've said based on the information you've gathered so far, you're still at 25. Do you think, just intuitively, you're here every day, do you think that's really the appropriate allocation as we think about the overhead allocation?
But correct me if I'm wrong, Satrice, not everybody is at 25%.
No, below the line is at 25%, below the line. When it comes to the salaries, if you directly work in that program, all of your salary is charged there. It's the admin piece, meaning Laura, me, Christy, that is what gets allocated differently, but that is not based on 25%. It's based on the work that we put in for those particular
Great.
events.
And this is completely appropriate. This is what we do at my business. This is how we do it. So Diego, I'm wondering maybe we do have most of the data we need. It sounds like they've already done a fairly detailed exercise on allocation, which then takes me back to, and you're already working on it in the strategic plan, and we all looked at it, and I'm supportive of your strategic plan, but it goes back to, we still have 2 revenue losing events. And so that's still the challenge we have. I don't want to shortchange what you're saying, but it sounds like they've got a lot of the data.
I prefer to know that we already have the data so we can get to work on fixing the 2 dogs. Respectfully. 2 dogs, it's an expression. It's a financial expression. It's nothing against the events per se. Sorry about that.
And it's the fair, so you might as well use a livestock or something.
Yes. Yeah. Well, we want to turn it into a cash cow.
There you go. Okay. Well, and I should say, and I'm sure Diego and Jasper and Anthony would agree with me, none of this is a criticism of the work we're doing. This is a criticism of the problem we've been given by the city. The city has said, do a fair. The city has said, do a flea market. And potentially the economics of doing it are not there. But we still have to make an attempt at it. That's what we're doing here.
And just generally in closing, we have never, in my tenure here, ever taken any support that Metro has given us for granted. We have never thrown out, well, we have to do it by charter, so it doesn't matter if we're successful or not. We have never done that. We will never do that, and we will continue to strive to reduce that deficit regardless of our legal obligation to do certain things.
But I also think that dynamics have changed. You've been thrown something, into a sort of a tizzy when the state decided that this was no longer going to be the place, and you had to pivot. And y'all pivoted well, and that's what we're just trying to make sure, that you're getting the proper support, because I realized you would throw something, and then you had to figure out, okay, well, not only Metro, but at one point we did have state support, in doing the fair, and so the numbers looked a little different, then, and so we were all learning, at the same time, how to make this successful. So, and I appreciate, everything, because it has been successful, because quite a few people are still talking about the Nashville Fair, they didn't even realize that it was no longer the state, and so it's been a smooth transition, so to speak, and so we just gotta make sure the money is there, because we're in some wild times right now. So, so thank you. Thank you, Satrice. So let's move on to our personnel report.
Okay, just a couple things. I believe this week Metro HR is going to go to the Civil Service Commission with a presentation about a comprehensive pay plan study that they did. So they're looking at changing up how some of the pay grades are given merit and incremental increases over time. We do have that report, but we are waiting until that presentation and authorization from the Civil Service Commission, and it does have to go through budget. But generally, when HR does any pay plan adjustments or cost of living increases, we get a notification by downtown saying, hey, we're going to support a, percentage COLA, and this is your target percentage for average on merit increase percentage. And then that is brought into our budget after that is approved. So we won't really know. And we do follow, even though we're non-civil service, we follow, it's important for us to follow the pay plan, because then we know that all of those positions have been evaluated by Metro HR. The other piece to our pay plan is we've worked really hard internally to make equitable positions based on like job functions. And so we've been really good at doing that. One of the things that we're doing coming up with HR is doing a look at our positions compared to other like positions in Metro to make sure that they are comparable for, job functions and salary. So we're going to be doing that, but not until after budget, because needless to say, this pay plan study that they are doing is very complex and time consuming. So we're going to give them a little bit of time to get that done, and then we'll circle back with HR on that review. The other thing with personnel is we do have a new staff person starting Monday in Scott's division for the fair. Her name is Jessica. We're really happy to have her, and we all know Jessica because she has been involved with the fair for a lot of years, and she is going to be great, and so we'll introduce her at the next board meeting.
Yes, Commissioner Arnold.
On personnel, remind me, and Laura, this was Anthony and I's recommendation. I've forgotten where are we in your performance evaluation? Because it's April now, and I think what do we need to be doing right now?
Right. So what I've done, I submitted my goals based on the strategic plan to you in March, and then Jasper and I are working on a time for him to sit down with me this month, and then we'll bring that to you in May based on the recommendations by your committee.
Thank you. Just couldn't remember. Appreciate you remembering.
Any questions? All right, next, operations.
If it's okay with you, Chair, I'd like to kind of combine my executive director because it's all kind of involved with operations. So needless to say, we were very on high alert this past week going into the predicted storms, because we know the volatility of Browns Creek. Overnight, so early Thursday morning, we already had road closures overnight because of the intense storms. Browns Creek crested twice at 11.5 feet. The water was so high and so fast, it actually came into the floodway. So it worked. First of all, it worked as it was constructed to work, which is really good. So it came up, it hit the fence here behind our employee lot. But it was amazing. It was 11.5 feet by like 10 a.m. and by 1, I believe it had completely receded and back within the channel. So at one point we had Nolensville Pike closed, portion of Wedgwood under the railroad trestle was closed, Bransford was closed, and Craighead were closed due to the amount of debris that was deposited in the road. And then, of course, Coliseum Way was completely underwater, and Fair Park looked like Fair Lake. So we had a lot of road closures, a lot of debris. Our neighbors were flooded across the street. You could see that. So we had to make some difficult calls and difficult decisions with the events, not knowing if the flooding was going to return Saturday and Sunday, because we were just kind of responding to the weather forecast. Fortunately, it wasn't bad again. However, because of the intense storms with our surrounding areas, a lot of our events, and we also encouraged potentially rescheduling to keep everybody safe trying to get here. And then certainly we had some people who physically couldn't get here for those events. So we are actively rescheduling the race, like Bob mentioned, and then we've got 3 other events, 2 of them which have been officially rescheduled. One is happening this weekend, the other one is happening in early May. And then we're working on rescheduling the boxing match that was going to be in here on Saturday. So I want to thank staff. As regards to the damage, we did have, most of it is debris damage. You know, porta potties down. We had a dumpster that actually got picked up and put in Browns Creek, so we got to get that out. So it's a lot of it is garbage and debris. But we did have some fencing damage out back. The black ornamental fence along Craig had the grassy area between the parking lot and the sidewalk. It actually eroded so much it exposed the concrete that the footers were that the fence was put in. So that is what caused it to fall. So we've got to get that replaced, and then we've got to get the big fence and gate into Lot 7 replaced as well. And how Metro usually does that is we all know that when we have a big event that we have to track all of our costs. So immediately on Thursday, we were out taking pictures. We have to track estimated damage. We have to track any labor costs associated with cleanup in response to the disaster, as well as all the equipment that we use. All of that, all of those estimates are due to Office for Emergency Management tomorrow. So we will get all that information to them. They take that all from the departments, come up with an overall estimate. And I believe what it is there's a certain dollar figure that triggers support and a claim to either TEMA and FEMA, and then it's a waiting game. In the meantime, we're going to go ahead and proceed with repairs. We've already notified downtown. They're very well aware. I mean, Chief Drake was out here looking at the floodwaters with us. So all of that is already well known. It's in the LEAP system in Metro, and we'll be going ahead and hopefully getting reimbursed. Sometimes Metro has actually given us special coding to use so that it doesn't come out of our operating. It's actually a fund. I don't know if it's just general fund or an emergency fund. And I don't believe we've heard at this point that there's a dedicated emergency fund that we can charge things to, or we just do it internally with our operations. It's still kind of, everybody's still kind of reeling and from the effort that was put out. But I do want to thank emergency management. They were here, they were on site. Police chief, like I said, Police Chief Jake was here. So we did get a lot of support from Metro that day because we were one of the hard hit areas.
Questions, yes.
Just, I'm sure I speak for the board. Great job managing the intense flooding, so.
So, as going into our older business, is there any discussion around the strategic work plan?
I think the only feedback that I'd like from you guys is a couple months ago you had expressed some interest in adjusting our mission statement. Is that still a desire? I sent out a draft, so I can pull this off old business if we're all comfortable. I believe we're comfortable with the content and the direction, but I think the only question was remaining is where are we on the mission statement and the vision, if you guys want to continue discussion on that or leave it as is.
I mean, my suggestion would be, or my point of view is, I am supportive of the work plan. I don't have it in front of me, but I know you've emailed it to us. I'm supportive of that. I might suggest we table the mission statement and maybe, and I think maybe think about a way to, I think we should think about it. I don't think I have anything to think about it right now, but maybe we table it till a later date. But I definitely think moving forward on the strategic plan, I'm very much in favor of doing that. but I'm welcome others' ideas if people want to tackle the mission statement at this point. I'm cool with it. I could table it and come back to it in 6 months.
All right. Would you like to make that into a motion? Or?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I move to adopt the FY 26-27 strategic work plan presented by Director Womack is my motion, and I'll go make the same motion as also to table further discussion on changing the mission statement at this time. That is the motion.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Discussion? All right. Well, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. All right. So unanimous vote there. So all right, moving on to the next business. Next item is under new business, consideration of bylaws update authorizing the executive director to execute event license agreements for up to 5 years.
So this is a request by myself and staff just in regards to event license agreements. And this is also one of the priorities that we identified in the strategic work plan regarding our booking strategy and trying to recruit large-scale multi-day events. What we're finding is that some of those really large-scale events are wanting a commitment, 3, 4, 5 years, showing that, they're going to invest in our facility, and we want some stability with contracting. I'll give you another example. We contract with Christmas Village every year. It'd be kind of nice to be able to just lock them in. So it is a request by me to give me the authorization to go ahead and do some multi-year agreements. I will highlight, and Commissioner Hartley, you may want to speak on this. One of the things that, the last sentence of Section 4A, where this edit is if the director determines an agreement will have a significant impact to the community, the chair shall be notified prior to execution. The one bit of feedback that I've heard is bring it to the board. Do like an informational item to the board, not just to the chair. So if you're comfortable with that edit, I am happy to make that edit. And I think that is probably a really good idea for us to talk about anything that may, be super large, that may be very different or could have community impacts or campus impacts that you would all want to know about. So happy to entertain that.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. I think that was my feedback. Thank you for reminding me. So nothing else to add to that. I would definitely support that additional edit, and just subbing out the word chair with the fair board would be the edit for legal. And I can make a motion to update the bylaws as reflected in our discussions, changing or adding the word license, striking of less than a year, adding up to 5 years, and then striking chair and adding fair board in the last sentence there.
Shouldn't we have going into numerous years agreements, shouldn't we have like a percentage increase of each year? Or are we going to be set into one price for 5 years?
I think it depends on the event, but we have, we can work with Metro Legal, and what we would do is build in that language within the contract. There are escalations built in other Metro contracts, so we would take that into consideration, because even if we don't necessarily change our building fees, we do have CPI adjustments that we do every year, so we would have to capture that in the contract. Yes. Good question.
No, I was just going to agree with the director that we can definitely add language into those event licenses where we can do term 1, term 2, term 3, and set the rental rates at different amounts for each term.
Yes, Ms. Hartley.
Yeah, Anthony, I support that direction. But I also think, I mean, to the question before that, I think Laura, we can delegate to her to do that under that direction, that, you know, what we're looking for, as our whole discussion today has been, we're about generating incremental revenue to close that budget deficit. I think that's what Anthony's getting at. But I'm still supportive of giving you that flexibility to get those multi-year agreements, to get those larger events, just keeping in mind that you need to make, you know, the good deal, not the easy deal, as Anthony pointed out.
There's been a motion, but I have not heard a second.
I'll second.
All right. So it's been moved and seconded. Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, close question. So all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. The motion passes. Item number, letter B, authorization to execute contract with North American Midway Entertainment Amusement South for Midway and Carnival services at the Nashville Fair.
Right.
So, is there any discussion?
I do have, so this was the RFP that Commissioner Owens sat in on, riveting, wasn't it? So this is the same company that we've been working with the past numerous years, even back when the State Fair was here. So we are very comfortable with this this entity. And I do have Scott here if you have any questions. But you know, it's pretty straightforward. We do have a revenue share that is indicated in the last page of Exhibit A. So we have a flat revenue share to Metro per concession and a percentage of 30% for sales, ride receipts, and attractions. So it is similar to what we've had in the past. And if you have any questions, like I said, Scott is here, and thank you, Commissioner Owens, for sitting in on that RFP.
Any questions?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'll just pick up on where Anthony left off. I mean, the revenue share is great. I mean, this is a 5-year contract. We're entering a period of extreme volatility. Well, it's actually a good point. I was going to get to that. It's actually it's a 5-year term, but it's a 2-year locked and then an option of 3 years. Yeah, so it's at our option to continue after the second year. So what I was going to get at is, you know, Anthony makes a good point here. It's like, well, we're about to enter a period of potential inflationary practice. Like, do we want to have these locked rates? But since it's a 2-year contract with the 3-year options of renewal, I feel pretty comfortable on a 2-year basis to lock those rates on the F&B side. So all that to say, working through all that, I'm supportive of doing this agreement. But just wanted to point out that when we get to that end of year 2, we may have to reevaluate the pricing model depending on where the macroeconomic environment has gone. If things are, you know, crazy 10% inflation, you know, you're going to want to renegotiate those rates.
I just wanted, if y'all had any questions, I just thought, okay.
No?
So I have a question. Have we envisioned what this is going to look like with or without potential construction that's going to be happening, that could potentially happen if the markets go, you know, start getting good again and we want to move forward with construction?
Currently, the majority of the Midway is in lot 11. I get numbered. It's sanitation lot to me. It's always been that way for 30 years, but it's lot 11 now. We used to call it sanitation lot. At some point, my understanding that will be under construction in the future for some development. Over here in our gravel lot, of course, that's getting worked on currently, which is a smaller footprint, but it's going to be a nice addition, especially to our kiddie area, to bring those kiddie rides over. Historically, the separating the kids' rides from the adult rides are really a good thing to do for the fair, because then that allows your teenagers and things on a regular Friday and Saturday night that love to have the bigger rides and the thrill rides separate from the families and their kids. So it makes a much better experience doing that. So that's going to be a nice addition to us. The carnival, ultimately, the ride revenue is either the number one or number two revenue maker for the fair historically. So that's a big part of the fair. We make a lot of revenue. So they are a very good partner. Ultimately, we will need, to answer your question, during construction, at some point that has to move somewhere. Where? It's still kind of up in the air. I know there's a lot of talks about different things with the racetrack that we're able to incorporate that. But currently, just to put things in perspective, historically we had a midway area that could accommodate 15,000 folks at one time. Currently, we're at about 5. We're at about a third. And that's one of the constraints that we have for revenue generation of the fair. So as we grow, that is something we really need to look at to be able to expand that, to be able to have more folks on grounds.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was getting at earlier, is just to say, I understand, how people generally think of the fair and what fairs are, what fairs aren't. But by us being Music City, can we think about something a little bit different? And can we incorporate some of the old with some of the new, and and just say that we're mostly an urban city, but there is some urban farming. I know that fair is typically around livestock. It's about rides. It's about games. But can we think about incorporating some of the urban farming, versus I don't know how many people in Nashville are gonna have a cow. I mean, I know it's maybe fun to play with, like milk a cow or whatever, but realistically, and then thinking about where we are, who we are, as a city, and I joked around about it earlier, and somebody probably was gonna take the idea, but I'm really serious about a concept like an American Idol type of concept. We are Music City. We have partners at the racetrack like Curb Music, Big Machine Music. Can we talk to them about, hey, can you offer the winner a contract, or something like that, to help a person, a local musician, get on the track of, and so people will then, you have musicians, bands, people coming to the fairgrounds, encouraging their people to come to the fairgrounds, and maybe creating a different type of foot traffic, and I know at one point, there's been talks about having a Miss, Nashville Fair or whatever you want to call it, different things like that, where we're incorporating, sort of that mixed urban, rural.
For sure. Fairs are basically a culmination of events, and ultimately, this fair totally looks different than the state fair previous years. We have incorporated the educational aspect to the masses here. We've brought the agricultural, the creative arts to the basically front door of the fair goer. To your point, this year we're going to add basically an egg competition. Eggs are a big deal right now. Everybody's looking at buying chickens and things like that. So put your eggs on display. That's something that people in the urban community can do. This year, we're also going to have a pollinator exhibit, because pollinators affect everybody here. Everything from butterflies to bees to ants. But ultimately, entertainment is the only way we're going to gross our way to profitability. So this year, I'm working with a promoter to bring a 2-day monster truck show into the grandstand at no cost to us. It'll be a revenue share, but they're going to do, they're going to underwrite and have most of that. For us, we have to use that grandstand. that is going to be, there's 15,000 seats, 14.5, and ultimately that is going to be the way for us to do that. Fairs, we technically as a fair, we are the Disney World for the locals, that during hard economic times, fairs typically grow and spike because people will not go to Disney World. Disney World costs so much for a family. For just, I think a pass is $150 a day, I think, I read something. That's a family of 4 here at the fair. So we have a huge need for that type of entertainment here in Nashville. We tend to outprice ourselves. Yes, there's a lot of music venues in Nashville, but I was going to go see a concert over at the amphitheater, and it was $150 to sit outside under the stars, which I grew up during Starwood, which was $25 to go see a concert. So it's kind of hard for me to pay $150 to sit outside. I want to sit inside Bridgestone in air conditioning and out of the rain.
So when you go there, you got to add administrative fees. They're thinking it'll be $200.
Exactly. So, but to your point, we are growing that way, and people that you talk to that come to the fair, even our peers at other fairs that come and visit, are very impressed with what we're doing with what we have here as a footprint. And we just got recognized by the Tennessee Association of Fairs as a regional fair. So I just want to share that.
Yeah.
So that's a big thing for us.
I think that's what I was saying is that it's great, but it's like, how do we generate the revenue? So that's what I was like, who's responsible for it? Like, I mean, I know you guys have sent out sponsorship packets, and all of that. I don't know. We don't know how well that's going, if it's not going, if it's, I
mean, ultimately with the staff and what we have here, we're catching the low-hanging fruit. Ultimately, we did grab a couple of new sponsors this year on the lower end that are interested. We did have a handful that was somewhat interested with that, but it just was not exactly. They were kind to listen to our pitch. Ultimately, with sponsorships, I mean, we really need to have someone for the whole property representing. I've said that in the past because it's all about connections, and those connections, it's something that you just can't buy. Someone has to have those.
Scott, real quick, can you talk to the board about the efforts with the Tennessee Association of Fairs and the state effort to get state funding to support fairs?
Yes, I can definitely. For about 4 years, we have, more than 4 years, but about 4 years ago, we were able to get $1 million for county fairs. Roughly, there's 57 county fairs in the state of Tennessee, and we were able to get that. But we can't get it reoccurring, which is it's a really hard thing to get reoccurring funds in the state. So this last year, the Commissioner of Agriculture, Charlie Hatcher, was kind enough to add it to his budget. So he put in, I think, $3 million to go to agriculture fairs this year. But during some budget session, that did get removed. Now we have got Rebecca Alexander, who had carried this before. She did put this in the state. I'm lost for words right there. Appropriations bill. So once it got cut out of the commissioner's budget, she did that. Now, if it passes, it'll be a one-time deal. But ultimately, county fairs across the state are used, the property is used for much more than just fairs. During COVID, they were used for testing centers, during floods, anything like that. They house trailers for FEMA, TEMA. So fairgrounds are a little bit more like parks across the state. They're for the public, even though they may be owned privately, they may be owned by nonprofits, or they can be owned by the county. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is to be able to get funding for them to have capital improvements for bathrooms, sewer, and water. Okay. All right. Thank you.
I guess we need a motion.
I move to approve this contract with North American Midway Entertainment Amusement South, LLC.
A second.
Well, actually, based on our bylaws change, do we actually need to have an approval of that?
The bylaw change only relates to event license agreements. It does not relate to contracts like this.
Legal, does that mean what it means to you?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay.
But I might phrase the motion as authorization to execute the contract rather than approving it.
That's the motion.
Yeah.
So moved.
I second that.
Can you restate the motion for Chris, for the secretary, please?
I'm not going to make it now, Jasper. I'm going to make Diego make it. I'm just kidding. I move that we authorize the executive director. No, actually, that's what is the motion? I don't know who's authorizing this.
Authorize the executive director to execute the contract.
And it is the executive director. It's not the chair. This doesn't matter to you.
It's either one. Yeah.
Okay. I move that we authorize the executive director to execute the contract with North American Midway Entertainment Amusement South LLC for Midway and Carnival services at the Nashville Fair.
Second that.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion, further discussion? All right, hearing none, call the question. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And aye. So unanimous. All right, that motion passes.
Real quick.
Okay. So have any closing announcements? I think we have one from the director.
Just wanted to give you kind of an advance heads up. We are in procurement with 2 other contracts, just so you know. Well, 3 contracts. So Metro overall is doing a pouring rights solicitation at the moment. I believe I emailed you guys about that months ago, but it is in cooperation with Municipal and Parks, and this is a soft drink, so Coke or Pepsi or any other brand. So that is going through procurement cycle right now. The other 2 items that we're going to be working on with procurement is tent rental services for the fair. That we're looking for a 5-year agreement on that, and then also sound and stage management services for the fair. That is in procurement, and then we're also, we haven't gotten like a buyer for golf cart rental services for the fair either. Metro's got a contract to rent carts for revenue for parks, but not for us to rent them for our use. So we're working with procurement on those 4 contracts right now, just to give you an advance heads up on that.
All right, cool. Thank you. And before we close, I have a question. Has there been any update? We're now at officially year 2 since we agreed on the contract or a situation with the around the racetrack. Has there been any discussions up there? Any discussions being had?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. And before we close, I just would like to recognize council member Terry Vo. I had to verify that you were still here because I can't see you because of the podium. Thank you for coming. If there's anything that you would like to say before we close.
I should be used to this. Thank you so much, Chair, for recognizing me, and thanks for all your hard work. And I do want to recognize, of course, Director Womack on everything happening over the weekend with the storm. I called to make sure that everyone at the Fairgrounds was okay. And I know people are inquiring, so let's work together to make sure how do we continue to prevent and mitigate the flooding. And I do want to announce that on April 26th, we are going to do a ribbon cutting at 445 Park Commons. Dirk, if you already said this, sorry if I'm repeating myself, but we just want to make sure that the community knows about it and that you all come out and celebrate this exciting moment as we continue to just make great improvements on the fairgrounds. So thank you all so much. And I just had my quarterly town hall, but the next one, since we're Music City, my themes, it's going to be in June, and I'm focusing on different industries in the district. So we just did small businesses, and my next one will focus on music. And then Q3 will be nonprofits, and Q4 will be creative arts. So once I have all those dates set, of course, y'all are always invited, but just I want to recognize and uplift all the various industries in the district.
Thank you. Thanks so much. All right. Hearing no other questions? Oh, yes.
Yeah. This is for Bob and Scott. Could we have some flyers for that ribbon cutting ceremony? So for the people who are coming to the ribbon cutting ceremony, they could have a racetrack schedule and the date of the fair next year. I don't know. Yeah. We got people here on the campus that might as well just give them something, let them know what's going on. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for the suggestion. I will note that I believe we're going to try to schedule it later in the day on the 26th because there's a soccer game that night. We want to take advantage of the activation on campus. So I will send that confirmation out as I work with Dirk and Councilmember Vo.
Yeah, and it might be good to have a couple of race cars out there while, people are touring, so we can show the soundproofness of the building. So that was great work. I'm still fascinated about that anyway, Derek. I keep talking about it every day, Derek, like how soundproof. I just couldn't believe it. But thank you all for participating in today's meeting, and I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All right, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Bye.
All right. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
This has been a service of the Metro Nashville Network. If you would like to see this presentation again, or for more information on this and other programs, visit nashville.gov.